Welcome, everybody, to everything you need to know about health. Of course, that title was chosen uh, in, on purpose in order to get everybody's attention and help people to understand that everything that we need to know about health is within grasp. It's not something that you need to take a lifetime to learn in order to have a healthy lifestyle that leads to um, good quality of life and low amounts of disease. So today we're going to be talking about the things that lead to health, and I'm going to start off by offering you a secret formula. I told you I wasn't going to do that, right? But here is the secret formula. There are a few things when combined can prevent most of the disease in this world. 90% of diabetes, 80% of heart disease, 70% of stroke, and 70% of colon cancer. These are the biggest things that are plaguing our nation, costing us trillions of dollars to take care of. And it turns out that they're all avoidable if you just take this secret formula. And this isn't soft science. This is something that's been studied very well and has been published in some of the most reputable medical journals. So here it says that a combination of these four healthy factors is associated with a reduction of the all-cause mortality risk by 66%. So 2/3 in this study of the people survived in comparison to the other group that did not have these factors. And in another study that studied these factors, 78% of the people that had all four healthy factors were able to avoid chronic disease. So these are the same chronic diseases that are the biggest cause of healthcare cost and healthcare issues in our country. So what's in the formula? It's the basic things that you guessed. It's nutrition, exercise, sleep, and some basic emotional wellness practices that we can talk a little bit about today. So let's start with nutrition. It's the one that many people have the most questions about. Some people would argue it's the most important factor in our health. There's a lot of ideas about nutrition out there. We can thank many of the people in the media for giving us lots and lots of things to think about, lots of different ways to eat. We have paleo diets, vegan diets, elimination diets, all kinds of diets that have been studied, have been talked about in the media for a long time now. And of course, the most popular one today, the one that everybody's hearing about, is a keto diet. It's all over the news, has been for a couple of years. And so this low carb, high fat diet has been all the rage for a while. And if you were to run a search to see all the articles that were published about nutrition just in the last few months, there's thousands and thousands of articles published every year. And so for the sake of this course, I stayed up late last night and I read all 9,000 of these studies, and I'm here to summarize everything that you need to know from these nutrition studies. And here it is. This box contains everything that you need to know about carbohydrates, protein, and fat in order to be healthy. And I'm not joking here. I really believe that everything that you need to know about carbohydrates, fat, and protein is contained in this empty box, meaning that you don't have to understand anything about carbohydrates, protein, and fat in order to be healthy. And that may seem like a pretty grand claim, but I have some data to back it up. So I'll start with this. this is a really interesting study where they found 5 of the healthiest areas of the world. These 5 countries have the same kinds of low rates of disease that I stated on that slide above. They have 80% less heart disease. They have 90% less type 2 diabetes, 70% less stroke, 70% less colon cancer. And these areas of the world eat the types of carbohydrate, fat, and protein balances that we see below here. I just realized there might be some people coming in. I better check. Oh, yeah, I came in late. All right, welcome everybody that just joined us. Sorry I didn't get to you right away. Okay, we were just talking about this graph. These are the 5 healthiest areas of the world that were identified in a particular study, but there are many other areas of the world that follow some of these same patterns. So if you look at the graph, there's a few things that stand out. One is, if you look first at the amount of carbohydrates, this is the percentage of calories that these people get from carbohydrates. And we, for the last 10 years, have been talking about how carbohydrates are the worst thing for you. And yet, if you look at some of the healthiest areas of the world, they're eating very high amounts of carbohydrate. So, you know, there's a few ways that you can look at this. And I'm not saying that this proves that we should be eating a lot of carbohydrate. In fact, I don't believe that it does prove that. What this proves is that you can be among the healthiest people in the world and eat a diet very high in carbohydrate. And the next thing that I think is very interesting about this graph is the fact that there is a huge variation between 6% and 50% fat, between 85% and 37% carbohydrate. So what I think this says is that it probably is not about how much fat, carbohydrate, and protein. Even though we've been talking about that for 60 years, of course, before it was all about fat was the demon, you know, fat was the thing that you had to stay away from. And then a stick of butter made it to the front page of Time magazine, and we all decided that fat was actually totally okay and that it was carbohydrates that was bad for you. When in reality, it's not about whether or not it's a carbohydrate, fat, and protein. So what we need to know is what is the same about these people's diets, since it's not the carbohydrate, fat, and protein content. And what is the same is that most of them are eating mostly whole plant foods. So if you were to look at a pie chart of how much of the nutrition is coming from whole plant foods in Okinawa, it's around 92% of what they eat. And if you look at how much of this is processed foods, and this includes sugars and oils that are added, or processed animal or plant products, it's only 4%. Same with animal products as a whole. So they really don't eat, people think that they probably eat a lot of fish, but they actually don't get a lot of calories from fish or any other animal products. Compare that to what we eat. Look at this huge chunk of how much Americans are eating of processed foods. And only 15% of what we eat is coming from whole plant foods. We're talking about foods that really start out just as a whole plant, and then you cook them in your kitchen, you mix them together, but you brought them into your kitchen just as a whole plant food. And then animal products make up a very large percentage of our diet, but a lot of those animal products are processed. So they're in this blue section here. And and then other animal products, unprocessed animal products, make up about 10%. So just looking at these two graphs may be one of the most instructive things that I could tell you about nutrition. The healthiest people in the world eat lots and lots of whole plants, and some of the unhealthiest people in the world, which is us, eat very little whole plants and lots of processed foods. So if you only knew one thing about nutrition, it would probably be that you should just eat as many whole plant foods as possible. So a lot of people say, well, I'm not willing to just be a vegetarian. I'm not willing to only eat whole plant foods, or a vegan. Um, and I say, I'm not quite there either. I don't only eat whole plant foods. But if you were to look at how much each added serving of vegetables has a benefit in decreasing causes of death, including cancer and heart disease, you would see that if you're just eating 1 or 2 servings like most Americans are, if you just bump it up to 3 servings, then you might reduce your risk of heart disease by up to 10 to 15%. And then each additional serving has an additional amount of benefit. So, though if we really want to be healthy, we would max out the amount of vegetables and fruits that we get into our diet, and there probably is no real maximum in how much vegetables and fruits would be beneficial for us. But even just taking the next step in adding some vegetables into our nutrition plan can have a huge impact on our health. So that's everything you need to know about nutrition. You just need to know that fruits and vegetables are really good for you. And if you are already eating 10 to 12 servings of vegetables in a day, then you can sign up for the advanced course. But probably there are a few people here that are eating that many servings of vegetables in a day, and until you are, you probably don't need to know a lot about, for example, which fruits are more beneficial for you, which vegetables are more beneficial for you. You probably don't need to know much about that. Which cooking preparations, should it be organic or non-organic? All of those things are way less important than the amount of vegetables that you get in your diet. And just one comment on organic foods, because I'll get a lot of questions about this, is what if I can't afford to buy organic foods? Should I avoid vegetables? And the answer to that question is absolutely not. You should not avoid vegetables because it's not organic. The chemicals in organic foods certainly do have a potential to do harm. The chemicals in foods that are not labeled as organic do have a potential to do harm. But we've looked at it, and they probably are causing way less harm than the value of eating the vegetable. So you can probably feel pretty good about just increasing your vegetables, even if it's not an organic fruit or vegetable. All right, let's admit a couple more people here. So we're on to exercise. Now, exercise has been claimed by many to be the most important factor in whether or not you're healthy. But we said that about nutrition too, right? And we might say that again here in a minute. So what does exercise do for our health? Well, we know that exercise is much more important for how long we live than our BMI. So, we've talked about, or people talk about, exercise being important for weight loss, but it turns out that it is much more important that you exercise than you lose weight. So when people come into my office and say, "Hey, I really need to lose weight to be healthy," I say, "Well, um, certain types of certain types of body shapes are potentially associated with disease, but we don't make you healthier by making you lose weight. We actually make you healthier by starting you on exercise and a nutrition plan that includes the nutrition that you need." And so if you were to compare a group of people that was obese, so not just overweight, but class 1 obese, with a group who is normal weight, if the category of obese people was active and the normal weight category was inactive, you would actually have better health outcomes being obese and active than normal weight and inactive. So it is a big deal whether or not you are exercising, more of a big deal than whether or not you are um, what you might consider the ideal body weight. So I'm not going to try and single out one gender here, but there is a particular gender who seems to talk a lot about their body shape when they come in to see me, and and they seem much more concerned about changing their body shape than changing their weight, and than changing their lifestyle. And I'm here to tell you that you can probably feel really good about your body if you're moving your body and putting good stuff in it. And you don't have to be as worried about the shape of your body. Um, here's one study um, that actually showed that your level of fitness, or how much you exercise, is the strongest predictor in how healthy you are, more so than being obese, than being a smoker, than having hypertension, high cholesterol, or diabetes. So you can have diabetes um, and be active, and that might be better, or the activity will have a higher impact on your health than the diabetes will. So exercise also decreases the rates of 13 types of cancer. It decreases dementia. It decreases diabetes. We have some people who reverse their diabetes completely, mainly with changing their exercise habits. And just an hour a week of activity has reduced heart disease by almost half. So that's pretty impressive statistic when we're considering all these people coming to me and wanting to talk about how to reduce their risk of heart disease. Well, that's not really what they want to talk about. They want to know what they need to do to avoid dying early. And many of them with high blood pressure, we give them a medication to reduce their blood pressure in order to help them reduce their risk of heart disease. And yet, the most important thing that they could be doing would be to do at least an hour a week of exercise. But how much do you really need for benefit? Um, well, we already said that an hour can make a big difference. 150 minutes of brisk walking per week was associated with an overall gain of life expectancy of 3.4 to 4.5 years. So the time you spend exercising really does add years on to the end of your life. So, and then let's talk about sleep. Sleep has also been reported to be the most important factor in our health. So, of course, there are experts claiming that nutrition is the most important, that exercise is the most important, that sleep is the most important. And really, all three of them have profound influence on each other. So whether or not we're getting enough sleep has a huge impact on what we eat and how our body processes food, and whether or not we're going to exercise. Also, what we eat has a profound impact on how well we sleep and whether or not we have the energy to exercise. And exercise has a huge impact on how much we sleep. So all of these things are important. And how much sleep do we need? We've heard 8 hours for a long time, and there's some pretty good studies that back up that 8 hours is probably the ideal, even for people who think that they need less sleep than 8 hours. So one large study found that sleeping 5 hours a night was associated with a 45% increased risk for heart attack. So we're talking about a huge difference in whether or not you are going to have a heart attack just based on whether or not you are getting sleep at night. We also know that sleep affects how well we're able to do our jobs. It affects our mood, whether or not we develop depression, anxiety. So, so sleep is a huge factor in our health. And how do we improve it? Most of us probably just need to go to bed on time, and we probably need to wake up at an early time in the morning too. And for most people in the country that are getting poor sleep or not enough sleep, just getting to bed and waking up are probably the most important things that we can do. But if you have trouble falling asleep, then you should probably talk to a doctor about some of the ways that you can improve your sleep. And there's some basic things that you can look up called sleep hygiene. And if you were just to Google sleep hygiene, you'd probably find some pretty good rules. But if you come and see us in our practice, we can give you some more resources to help you understand how to get better sleep. I didn't put a lot of time into this avoiding harmful substances because I think we all know that smoking is not good for you. We all are pretty aware that drugs are not good for you, and those are things that if you have an issue with right now that you need to get out of a habit, you need to get rid of an addiction, then you should talk with somebody who can help you get through that. Alcohol and caffeine are actually a couple of things that there's been more controversy about. You know, some people say that a glass a day of alcohol is really good for you. Some people are saying that caffeine is a great way to help you exercise. The best research that I've been able to come up with says that probably avoiding those things altogether is a good idea for health. But again, we're talking about the most important things. So if you're really just drinking one glass of alcohol a day and you're drinking caffeine in small amounts in the morning, then that's probably not the most important thing you can do to improve your health. But if it's anything outside of that, you may want to talk about how changing those habits will improve your overall health and help you avoid disease. Emotional wellness is another huge factor in our health, and this is something that we could spend a lot of time talking about. And we're going to do another lecture specifically just on emotional wellness, and especially during this time when so many people are feeling the stress of the virus and the economy. There's a lot to talk about here, but a couple of basic points that should be understood is that meditation and mindfulness exercises are not just a buzzword. You know, most of the time when there's something that's really hot and people are talking about it on the news, it's probably not that good. But meditation and mindfulness actually has amazing research to back it up. And so, so those are a couple of things that I would definitely recommend looking into if you are not doing it already. So we all know that these things are of value. You know, we've been taught these things our whole life, and intuitively we know that exercise, sleep, nutrition are valuable. But but we haven't done a whole lot with it, or we haven't done as much as we feel like we need to with it. So I wanted to talk to you um, about a way of thinking about our health. And this picture here, this lovely picture that I drew today, is a stream. And this stream is supposed to represent the stream of our health. And if you think about the way a stream runs downhill, you know that there is more opportunity for a stream to become polluted as it gets further down the hill. And at the bottom of this screen here, if you picture yourself being at the bottom of the screen, and that's the part of the stream where you are, and the water is polluted, what are you going to do about that? And the way that some people manage a polluted water source is with some kind of chemical. You add a chemical to the water, and it helps kill the bacteria and things that might make you really sick right away. But of course, the trade-off with a chemical is that the chemical itself might have some harmful effects. And in many cases, though, that trade-off is one that we're willing to make, because if the sickness, or if the pollution of the stream is immediately dangerous to us, then we kind of have to take the stream where we're at, and we have to add something to it to make it so to help us not get sick right away. But of course, if we live by this stream, we're not going to be totally content just treating this dirty water, when potentially we could look further upstream and find out where we can stop the pollution from entering the stream. So if you look a little bit upstream, you see the things that we've been talking about are exercise and nutrition and sleep. And we've learned already that 80% of our health problems can be avoided with exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And so that takes care of a lot of the pollutants in this stream. But unfortunately, not all of us have cracked the code. Actually, none of us have cracked the code in having perfect exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And so we have to look a little bit further upstream to understand how we can affect these things. And above exercise, nutrition, and sleep, we have our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs. So our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs are the things that will determine whether or not we're going to get good exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And they also have a profound effect on our health outside of that, because they alter the chemicals that are in our body. They cause stress hormones, which can cause long-term inflammation, leading to heart disease and kidney disease. So, especially gastrointestinal problems. So these thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, they have an important role in leading to our lifestyle factors, but they also have a profound influence in and of themselves on how healthy we are. But again, those things come from a place too, right? There is a source of our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And those things come from further upstream. And that is mainly our upbringing, past experiences and trauma, and our environment, or the culture that we live in. Those are where our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs generally come from. And if you look a little further upstream, or all the way upstream, you get our genetics. That's where a lot of the raw materials for our health comes from. And a lot of people think about our genetics as determining our health. But there is lots of good science that says that very little of our health is actually determined by our genetics, meaning there are only a few and somewhat rare diseases that are 100% determined by our genetics. And you think about Down syndrome as something that you're born with. You know, the way the genetic code was put together means you come out with Down syndrome, and no amount of upbringing, trauma, thoughts, feelings, or exercise, nutrition, or sleep are going to change the fact that you have that condition. But even with some of the most profound genetic traits, these things downstream have a profound effect on how those genes are expressed. There's a field of science called epigenetics, which has shown that the genes that are expressed are largely determined by some of these downstream things, like our environment, our thoughts and feelings, and our lifestyle patterns. So you might notice in this pattern here that the further we go upstream, the harder it is for us to change these things. And that could be seen as kind of frustrating, because if the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs come from upstream, and we can't change what's upstream, then does that mean that we are stuck with our health as it comes? And the answer to that question is no, because even though our current state may be determined by what happened before, it does not mean that it's not alterable. And actually, if you look at the effect that exercise, nutrition, and sleep has on our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, you'll find that that it is not complicated how to start altering our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And many times we will want to speak with a counselor and get therapy to help us work on these thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. Or there's lots of great books, and I have a bunch of books that I would recommend to you if you're interested in altering the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. But you'll also be surprised to find how much of an effect a daily exercise routine, a daily nutrition pattern, and better sleep will affect these upstream factors. And so in order to create these new habits, there are a lot of experts out there that can talk to you about creating habits. I would say that the most important thing that we could do today is decide that we are going to commit to our health. We're going to make a commitment up in the thoughts area, that we are going to work on these things for the rest of our life. We're going to evaluate whether or not our health is actually a priority for us, and then we're going to build it into our schedule. And when we do that, we'll probably go looking for more information. And I threw just a couple of books on here. I have a lot more books to recommend, but these are a couple of ones that have influenced the way that I think about changing our habits and our thought patterns. Daniel Pink wrote a great book about what motivates us called Drive. This model here is by an author named B.J. Fogg, and he has a book called Tiny Habits. I would highly recommend reading his book, or just watching. If you search YouTube for the title Tiny Habits, you'll see an amazing video on how our habits can be changed. Start With Why does not spend a lot of time talking about our health or our habits, but it is a great book talking about what motivates us. And if you read it in the context of whether or not health is a priority for you, then you'll find a lot of good information in there. A great book to read on the science of nutrition is a book called How Not to Die. In my opinion, this book is the greatest compilation of science that has ever been put together on nutrition. And you'll find in there that he is adamantly vegan. He's an ethical vegan, but you'll see in the studies that he shares that most of the studies that he references are societies that are not 100% vegan, and they show the real benefit of eating at least a mostly whole foods plant-based nutrition pattern. So I am just so grateful for all of you joining us today.